And that's the angle. Joining me now is Mike Davis, former law clerk for Justice Gorsuch and president of the Article 3 Project. And back with us, Chris Landau, former law clerk for Justices Thomas and Scalia and former ambassador to Mexico for President Trump. Chris, your comments last night made a big stir, got a lot of attention. But how damaging is this for President Biden to publicly endorse this move by the Colorado Supreme Court, which in effect he did by saying there's no doubt that the president is an insurrectionist? No doubt, he said.
Laura, I think it's a very sad day for our country. I thought yesterday was a very sad day with this state court ruling out of Colorado. And to see the president of the United States endorsing that, frankly, just rubs salt in the wound, especially since nobody has charged President Trump with insurrection, which is a federal crime. At 18 U.S.C. 2383, there is a specific crime of insurrection. Jack Smith didn't even bring that charge against Trump, much less convict him of insurrection. So, again, the idea that it's so obvious, as the president says, that he's an insurrectionist, well, if it was that obvious, why didn't you bring that charge to a jury then? Because they don't want to defend that charge. So conveniently, courts are applying this clause of the Constitution without even ever having anybody tried on this particular crime.
And Mike, is the president not trying to not just torpedo the election next year, but also torpedo a future presidency of Donald Trump? So if Donald Trump wins, then he wins, and then the former president says, oh, well, the country elected an insurrectionist. Don't listen to him. This guy didn't believe in democracy. This guy wanted to overthrow the government. So he's actually torpedoing things on multiple levels with that inflammatory comment today.
There's no question. And remember, this lawfare against President Trump started with President Biden. It was President Biden who had his deputy White House counsel, Jonathan Su, waive President Trump's claim of executive privilege that led to the unprecedented, unnecessary, and unlawful home raid on the office of former president for presidential records that President Trump was allowed to have under the Presidential Records Act. It was senior Biden Justice Department official Matthew Colangelo that went from the number 3 office in the Justice Department to Alvin Bragg's office in New York to resurrect a zombie case against President Trump for under a bogus legal theory, a theory that the Federal Election Commission passed on, the prior Manhattan DA passed on, the current Manhattan DA, Alvin Bragg, passed on, and it was only resurrected when Biden sent Matthew Colangelo to Manhattan. This is lawfare driven by President Biden, and this is very destructive to our country.
Well, they can't actually tell America credibly, can they, that their lives are getting better, that they have more money in their pocket, they have more buying power, that the country's more united, that the border's more enforced. They can't argue any of that. So the only thing they're left with is America's racist, Donald Trump's an insurrectionist, and we have to save democracy by short-circuiting the vote. That's all they have. I mean, Chris, I don't know what else they're arguing here. But we have judges, former appellate court judges, Chris, like Mike Ludig, and you and I were, good friends with Mike Ludig back in the day. He was once ostensibly a conservative who's out defending this Colorado Supreme Court ruling. Watch this.
This is not politics. It is certainly not partisan politics. And the Supreme Court's decision yesterday was not a political decision in any sense of that word. It was a pure and remarkably masterful decision of constitutional law.
Chris,
the Trump derangement
I got
syndrome
text this morning
runs very deep in that
about this comment.
Yeah. Listen, Laura, I mean, this is, let me say this. I was ambassador to Mexico, right? If Mexico had tried to disqualify the leading candidate of the opposition, if some state court in Mexico, consisting only of judges appointed by the ruling party, had tried to disqualify the leading candidate, we would be up in arms. We'd be imposing sanctions on Mexico, right? I mean, President Bukele of El Salvador today said the United States has lost its ability to lecture anyone in the world again about democracy. I mean, we need to wake up as a country to what is going on here, Laura. The silver
I mean,
lining
I
is that
think-
I'm confident the Supreme
ahead.
Court will reverse this.
Well,
US Supreme
as they did, Mike, in so many other cases where Joe Biden just went completely crazy on the Constitution, did these executive orders like, oh, we're going to give you special status, or we're going to allow you not to pay your loans back, and the court had to come in and clean up that mess then. But that's pretty narrow thread we're hanging by, a thin thread we're hanging by to rely on the court every time this nutbag, sorry, president decides to do something like this.
Yeah, the Democrats impeached President Trump twice for nonsense. They've indicted him 4 times for non-crimes. They've illegally gagged him twice. They're trying to bankrupt his business for non-fraud. That's all backfiring. And so now their legal Hail Mary is this ridiculous legal theory under the 14th Amendment to disqualify him, which is what they did to Confederates who engaged in insurrection against the United States.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, these 4 goofballs on the Colorado Supreme Court, they caught this legal Hail Mary. The Supreme Court must fix this immediately.
Now, Democrat hack Mark Elias, Chris, made a comment today about how this could work across all 50 states. Watch.
If Donald Trump took an oath of office and engaged in rebellion or insurrection, then he is disqualified from holding the office of president again, period. And that is true in Colorado, that is true in Alabama, that is true in Minnesota, and that is true in Alaska. It's true in all 50 states plus the District of Columbia, which has electoral votes. So this one may be for all the marbles.
This is their fever dream, Chris.
Yes,
fever
well,
dream.
fortunately for all of us, Mark Elias is not going to be the one making that call. It's going to be the U.S. Supreme Court. And this is a federal issue regarding a federal candidate. So obviously, a state court won't have the last word on this issue. I am as convinced as I have been of any legal issue that the U.S. Supreme Court will take this case because they have a discretionary docket. Remember, so the first question is, are they going to grant review of this case? I think they will, and I think they will reverse it. I hope for the sake of the country that it is unanimous. I think it's important that the Supreme Court send a message that we can't be electing our presidents through lawfare.
Yeah, it should be 9-0. Mike, Chris, wonderful to see you tonight. Thanks so much.